Pathfix Automation tutorial series. The series will cover every aspect of the automation platform and how to automate your API integrations. In this video, we will go through how you can start your automation build, create a custom API, and map the response received for action. For my use case, I want to send a notification to my Slack channel when there is a new lead in my app. In this case, my source would be a JSON that I will be passing on to the automation. So let's go ahead with the build. To begin with, we will click on Design and create a new automation. This will add a new automation in my platform. So we'll go ahead and give this a title. In this case, I'll just name it something simple. Once that is done, I'll go ahead and paste my JSON over here that I would be sending from my app to the automation. Alright, now that I have done that, my next step is for me to add the Slack API. We'll go ahead and create a new node. This would we'll just call an API. Now there are two ways for you to do it. One, you could either search for an existing API that we already have pre-configured in automation, or you can go ahead and create your own custom API. For the purpose of this video, we'll go ahead and create the custom API and show you how you can go ahead and do that. We'll name this right. Before we go ahead and create the API, since I want the message to go to my Slack channel, I would need to connect my internal Slack channel to the Pathfix Automation platform. Now, if you are using this to power an integration for your user-facing integration, you would just have to connect your Pathfix OAuth platform. Just click on Connections and search for Pathfix and just connect your Pathfix OAuth platform right here. But in this case, since it's an internal Slack channel that is mine and not my customers, I simply go ahead and click on Slack and add the connection. I have already a connection that has been added to Slack here. So we'll proceed with the next step of building out the API. I'll click on API and select a new API. We'll name it and we'll go ahead and start the build. The API creation tool is pretty straightforward. I'll just select whether it's a post or a get, add the endpoint here, and then add the body that I would be sending along with the API call. So in this case, I'll just go ahead and fill out that information. All right, so this is a post call to a Slack chat.post message, and I have entered the body. Now, since I want dynamic fields to be entered, I will just add them in these brackets right here. Our next step would be to initialize through connection. If you initialize directly, it would be sent directly to the API, but in this case, we do want the authorization headers to go along with it, so we will do an initialize through connection. And the connection I will choose is the one that I have already authorized in the Connections tab. I will go ahead and enter some dummy data right here for me to complete the initialization. Now that I have entered this, I'll just go ahead and click on Initialize. All right, you would see that the API has gone through successfully, and I have also received the response in Slack. So I'll click on Use, Save. Now my API has been saved and it's ready for me to use in my automation. I'll go ahead and search for the API that I just built. And we'll go ahead and add some dummy data so we could go ahead and set up this connection. Now that I have added the API, what I want is for all of the dynamic fields to be picked up from the JSON that is sent from the first node. So here's how we would dynamically map the data that is coming through. Just double click on the field, and we would be given the option to choose data from the first node, and that's what we will do. This is the name, the email, and we'll just repeat it for the rest of it as well. All right. Now that this is done, we'll go ahead and test and publish this. All right, so my test is now successful. I could go ahead and publish this to live right now, or I could also copy the endpoints for the dev and the live environment. So I can test it in dev, and if everything works, then my live, I can just replace the endpoint with the live endpoint. So I'll go ahead and copy both these for use later. For now, I'll go ahead and push to live. And that's it. My automation is essentially live. If I copy the endpoint right here, I would be able to call this endpoint along with the data that I want to send across to the automation for it to continue working. Now we'll go ahead and test this using Postman. Right, so in Postman I have included a post to the automation endpoint, which is the dev environment, and I have the data that is going to go through, and we'll just go ahead and hit send and see if the automation is live and listening. Here you go. The automation is working the way we intended. So now every time my system sends out the sign up information to that endpoint, the automation would run. The automation, this is the dev environment. So let's go ahead and take a look at how the live environment looks. There you go. In the live environment, you would see the automation that is currently live. We'll go ahead and click on it. The only change that you would be able to make here is the ability for you to enable or disable it. To make any changes to this automation, you would need to go back into the dev environment to be able to make changes to it. Right. You can continue to look at the other videos in this series and go through our documentation at autodocs.pathfix.com.